You're listening to 91 Reasons, a journey into the twisted landscape of pop culture. Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times. And now, the voice, Jeff Tucker.
Take my love, take my land, take me where I cannot stand. I don't care, I'm still free. You can't take the sky from me. Take me out.
Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon pledger Hendel. We want to thank Hendel. His amazing support of this show is unprecedented. So many people are involved behind the scenes in helping me do the things that I do that it truly is amazing when I look at what is this show? This show is me sitting down and talking to a microphone. Rarely do I have guests. It's mostly my point of view, my adventures. So it's interesting how much effort it does take to get to this point, So I am honored and humbled that people are helping me out in such a way that it really does make this such a communal joint effort, even though in the end, when I do finally sit down and do the show, it's just me. But know that there are many people behind the scenes who who contribute in so many different ways, whether it's loaning me movies or supporting us on Patreon or any of the other hundreds of ways that people, or people that tell me, I want to help, I don't want any credit, I just want to help. I'm like, that's fantastic. So it really is humbling. And I know I use that word a lot, but it does fit. And you can't move forward with who you've become without thanking the people who got you there. So there's some life advice for you, right? There's your bumper sticker of the day. A couple of cleanup notes before I get into today's episode. The first being, boy, was I taken to task in real life over people who really enjoyed Tomorrowland and just didn't understand my animosity towards it. Well, listen, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. And if you walked out of Tomorrowland and felt like you could start something great and take on the world, then God bless you. Then the movie that they were trying to make somewhere in there did its part. There's nothing wrong with liking a movie in the face of everybody telling you it's terrible. I do it all the time. I'm a big fan of Last Action Hero, a movie reviled by people. I'm a big fan. I generally liked John Carter, and it was universally panned. But I can't meet you on this one, folks. If you enjoyed Tomorrowland, you and I have just opposite opinions because it was a very angry, cynical movie, and I don't want to go into it again, other than while I was arguing with somebody at work, they pulled a weird card on me. And I was a bit surprised by it because, if you're listening to this show, obviously, I can get revved up about a topic, and I realize that I speak clearly and concisely and at a what I consider to be a normal volume. But for a lot of people, clearly, concisely, and normal volume translates to loud and yelling. And I'm like, well, I'm not yelling. I come from a performance background, so I've learned to project. I'm not swallowing my words, hoping that maybe some of them will get across. No, I'm telling you directly what I think. That's what this show is about. That's who I am about. So they basically said to me after I ranted about Tomorrowland, and I ranted this way. I said, look, I'm going to describe a plot to you, and you tell me what I'm describing. A group of scientists decide that the rules of the science world are too much for them, so they band together as scientists, recruit some of the best minds in the world, and they move their facilities to a remote area that nobody can get to, and when that is deemed not remote enough, they move it to another dimension. And then they people get lost in that dimension and have to find their way out. And then when they get out, they realize they want to go back. And I've just described both the plot of Lost and the plot of Tomorrowland, both by Damon Lindelof. There we go. He has regurgitated lost into a kiddie film about the pessimism of society and global warming to some degree. So, whatever. But while I was doing that, the person said to me, instead of I respect anybody who says, look, Jeff, you're wrong, and here's why you're wrong. Okay, we can have a discussion. They'll tell me that General Nux or Nix or whatever Hugh Laurie played, he was doing this, this, and this to try to get people to be better. And that's why he did that. Okay, but he didn't do any of that. Instead, he said, well, what have you done? Why don't you make a movie? And I said, wait a minute. I said, first off, that's the argument of the week, is telling me to do something equal. And secondly, I did. I have. I'm working on my 4th novel. So I have put literally my money where my mouth is. I have put myself out there in a way that if you think my opinions are nothing but hot air, you can read my books and say, well, here, Jeff, Tomorrowland is great for these reasons, and your books are bad for these reasons. And there's an argument we can have. Because as much of a stickler as I am for plot points and characters behaving rationally the way we've been told they're supposed to behave in the movie, don't you think that I didn't spend years of my life making sure that my novels fit the mold of what I consider to be a cohesive story? They do. So I just thought that was interesting, like, well, what have you done? It's easy to critique movies, you've never made one. Well, no, I've never made one. I never jumped out of a plane either, and I can tell you I wouldn't like it. But as far as telling stories, I've been doing that since I was 12, since I started writing one-act plays for school. So I have put myself out there, and I've never had anybody come up and attack my books, but if they had a problem with it, I would address it. Okay, I'm sorry you feel that way. Let's work through it. Maybe speaking directly to the writer, you and I can get together and fix whatever issue you have with my book. That's never happened, but if it did, I'd be ready for it. And every great work of fiction has its problems, just by the notion of how long the narrative is. J.K. Rowling introduced a time travel device in Book 3 of the Harry Potter series. A device so powerful it could negate the entire series had somebody simply used it earlier. And there's a lot of arguments why she didn't, and I get all that. I'm just saying. Harry Potter has been given some of the most powerful weapons known in the history of literature. An invisibility cloak, a tracking map, a time turner, a wand that shoots pure energy, the ability to blink out of one place and blink somewhere else. So she had to come up with a pretty big adversary if she's going to give him weapons that big, because the greatest stories always have the villain more powerful than the hero, and the hero rises up. That's just good fiction, folks. So I just thought that was interesting. Rachel and I went and saw San Andreas Friday. There's no need to give you a big review because it's a silly little fluff movie about it's disaster pornography. Just 2 notes if you're going to see it. 2 notes and tell me if I'm wrong. First is the movie opens. I'm not going to spoil the movie for you. The movie opens with The Rock and his crew. And there's him and 2 other crew members, a cameraman, and a reporter on the helicopter. And they're helping a woman get out of a ravine that's in the San Fernando Valley, 17 miles north of Los Angeles. And as soon as they get there, they're down to 5 minutes of fuel, and they got to get out. Beep, 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 beep. We're running out of fuel. We got 5 minutes. Good thing I can do it in 3. Boom, get them out. What happens if we run out of fuel? Well, we're all going to die. So then, when the big one hits, he's shown with his co-pilot walking towards the chopper because they're on their way to Hoover Dam, to help the survivors, right? To help rescue people. The next shot, he is flying over LA to help his wife. Where did the co-pilot go? Why is he alone in that chopper? There's got to be something missing. Secondly, He picks up his wife, and they immediately decide they have to go to San Francisco. How can they go to San Francisco if you just showed us that that thing runs out of fuel 10 minutes after it takes off? I didn't make these rules. You made these rules. You needed that extra layer of drama at the beginning to have him run out of fuel. So why can they fly all the way to that mall? And they don't run out of fuel. They actually get dinged by one of the buildings and have to set down. So it's totally different. The other issue I have with San Andreas, and this is just, I get it's a movie. I totally get that. But oh my God, the buildings in the movie are made out of cardboard and good intentions. Because when the earthquake hits, they don't just topple over. They shred, they splinter, they fall apart like they're made out of graham crackers. And I just thought that was visually, I guess it looks good, but most of us know in modern life, buildings wouldn't do that. And if you're going to give real danger, real suspense to the film, there should be at least a tiny layer of realism to it so that we can go, oh man, they're in trouble. That way when they get out of it, we're like, oh, I didn't see that coming. That's the greatest resolution ever. Maybe I'm asking too much of summer movies. My friend Andy on his podcast talked about the summer pass and how movies in the summer are just given a pass. We got to check your brain at the door. I don't want to check my brain at the door. I like my brain. My brain likes to be entertained, and it likes to be entertained by things that make sense. If they don't make sense, then the movie should be surreal, and then it's okay that it doesn't make sense. In Inception, it's okay that the street folds in on itself. I get it. We're in the dream world. Beautiful. Perfect sense. The building shreds apart. Okay? Sure. But that being said, I actually enjoyed San Andreas. I didn't expect a lot out of it. So what I got out of it was, relative to what I was willing to put in. And I sat there with my popcorn and I laughed the whole time. I really did laugh. My wife kept nudging me. Why are you laughing? Because it's absurd. And it's absurd in a way that's funny. Nothing wrong with that. I wish that there had been more characters, more people to care about or cheer when they die, But it's not an Irwin Allen movie. It's a rock movie, so it's got to be rock-centric. But even in those Irwin Allen movies, didn't Paul Newman know when to let somebody else take over? At least plot-wise? Anyways, all right, that's it for the roundup. This episode is brought to you by Hendel, who requested a modern-day classic, Serenity, the Firefly movie. Here's the deal. I did not see Firefly when it aired. I mean, who did? There was a core group of people that managed to find this show on Fox. But I have to be honest with you. The promos were not engaging. I think it was on Friday night, not good for a TV show. This is before the advent of DVRs, so you either watched it or you recorded it on VHS. And by 2002 when it aired, my VCR was on its last legs. I was looking for a way to transfer everything over to DVD and chuck that thing out the window because, an 80s pack rat like me, you can imagine the number of video cassettes I had. I had literally hundreds, if not 1,000, each one carefully labeled of what was on it, of movies I had taped with the commercials and MTV videos and Ion LA swimsuit editions, right? I had stacks of that. So by 2002, I was not looking to add to that pile by recording an obscure sci-fi show on Fox. And you know what? The other thing is, you got to look at, before you invest in a show, you got to look at where it's airing. And Fox might be the most unlucky place for any kind of genre fan because they never let shows, simmer for a while. On Fox, you're either a big hit or you're canceled. You're out. NBC's the same way. ABC will let stuff simmer for a while. CBS, almost everything they air is a hit. When it bombs on CBS, it bombs so big that you forget it was even on. Like Laughlin, Nevada, the musical, right? But Fox, I'm always gun shy because I don't want to get into a show for them to cancel it. Because what's going to happen is, and you guys all know this, you're going to get involved in a show, and they're going to cancel the show mid-production and not tell the creative team behind the show, hey, this is going to be your last episode, in enough time to put together a finale. So what happens is you end up with crap like, I watched every episode of The Event. Remember The Event on NBC? Where people who'd been missing for 50 years appeared and they go, and that's not The Event. Well, it turned out, spoiler alert, The Event was aliens came to Earth, they built an array to open a dimensional doorway and pull their home planet to Earth. So people of Earth looked up and there was another planet orbiting above us, Fifth Element style. And then at the moment of that revelation of the event happening, guess what happened? Well, of course, NBC canceled it. So there's no resolution. Terra Nova, remember Terra Nova? The most complicated time travel dinosaur end of the world show ever. As soon as you get into it, canceled. V was brought back on ABC via an all CGI cartoon show. There were a few live actors, but everything else was CGI. But they even had Jane Badler, man. They brought Jane Badler back on V. And at the end of the second season, they dropped the red dust and changed the atmosphere. Everybody looked up. There was a change about to happen. And canceled. So you can see the pattern of genre sci-fi, genre weird shows. They don't last. And they don't get a resolution. Now, that being said, that's why I didn't involve myself in Firefly. And who knew when they aired it in September that by December it was going to be gone. Just gone. And it was a blip. It was a total blip. But here's what happened. Like a phoenix from the ashes, Fox put out the DVD set. Now, I didn't buy the DVD set because I never watched Firefly. But somebody who knows me really well handed it to me and said, you should check this out. I thought, I don't know. Yeah, okay, all right. So here's what happened. That thing sat on my shelf for, this was 2004, 2005. This thing's, no, it got to be 2004. This thing sat on my shelf, and I didn't do anything with it. And then one day I put the pilot on, and the pilot opens with a space battle, a land battle with lasers and cannons, and it shows the brown coats losing. And I watched it for about 5 minutes, and I went, this doesn't look good at all. I don't know about this. And you know what? I took it out, and I put it back on the shelf, and it gathered dust for another 9 months. Then, oh my God, Universal announced they were going to make a Serenity movie, a Firefly movie called Serenity, based on the name of the ship. And that had me intrigued, because why would they do that? That rarely happens. They took the X-Files, which was as a successful TV show, and ported it to the movies, and then went right back to the TV show. It was a hit while it was on. Simpsons, same way. It's not every day that a show is a cult classic, bombs, and then somehow comes back. There are very few, like Family Guy, Firefly. The sad part is that the massive sales of Firefly did not warrant a second shot at a series. That would have been poetic justice, man. But by the time people realized what they had, all the actors had moved on. Joss Whedon had moved on, and sometimes you can't go home again in that kind of long-term way. But a film, hey, we can get everybody together, pay them a little more, and do a movie. So I was very intrigued. So I sat down, I put that pilot back on, and I was entranced. And I devoured every episode of Firefly. It is a brilliant TV show. It is the closest at the time we were ever going to get to the continuing adventures of Han Solo, because that's really what it is. Malcolm Reynolds is Han Solo. The Serenity is the Millennium Falcon. And if you squint, it makes it even better. I'm not saying that Zoe is Chewbacca, thank you. Probably Jane, right? But the episodes are very good. The unaired episodes are brilliant. And Firefly was given a chance to fly again on the big screen. So the most impressive thing about Serenity the movie is it manages to maintain the flavor, the feel, the tone of the show. It's not big and flashy like, hey, we got some money and we're going to do something huge here. No, it's Joss Whedon did something really important here. And I wish a lot of other TV shows would take notice. I mean, it's been 10 years since Serenity was out. And other than the ridiculous idea that Entourage is coming back as a movie, we've not seen this business model used again. Where he said, hey, I'm going to have a movie. And instead of doing like a big budget version of a Firefly episode, instead, I'm going to take this opportunity and we're going to wrap the whole thing up. And we're going to close everybody's story and open a few new ones. And that is the hallmark of great writing. And the hallmark of a guy playing in his own sandbox with his own creations. Because it's not like Joss Whedon working with Marvel. Because if he wants to kill somebody in the Avengers, there's going to be 10,000 meetings to decide whether he can do that or not. But with Serenity, it's like he can do whatever he wants. So what we get in Serenity is we get the full story of River. I was going to call her Summer, but that's her real name is Summer, but her TV show name is River. I'm confused. But, and if I switch back and forth, that's why. But we get the full story of River, of the lab she came from, basically what they did to her, and why she's so wanted by the Alliance. And they personify the Alliance with the tracker guy, who's very good. And we get an elegant, more powerful villain. That's the most important thing. He's got the entire Alliance at his disposal. And even with that, he's still on his own a badass. His sequence in the hospital lab at the beginning is fantastic, with the cameo there by Michael Hitchcock from the Groundlings. I saw him at the Groundlings. But no, a very good scene. The great scene where he goes, "This is a good death." Like, oh, this guy's good. And more important, it sets him up as honorable. He's telling him, this is a good death. It's okay that you're dying. You've died in the service of what you were doing. It's not frivolous, but it's time for you to go. And that's going to become important later at the end of the movie. You know, all the elements of this character are being set up very carefully. Joss Whedon knows how to define characteristics. And by making him a little mystical and very honorable, the ending is going to make total sense. But then we get right into the thick of things with the crew of Serenity. And the Firefly ship, again, going through space without sound, because there's no sound in space. They won't they won't change that aesthetic until the very end. And it's very jarring when at the end there is laser blast noises in space and such, because they've been so careful up until that point not to have noises in space, just music, because there's no oxygen. Sound does not travel, right? So it's scientifically accurate, if not movie popcornish. Does that make sense? We give up a lot of reality because we want things to be a certain way in the movies. And laser blasts and fire in space is something we expect. But watch the sequence where the Firefly is falling out of the sky.
This is the captain. We have a little problem with our entry sequence, so we may experience some slight turbulence and then explode.
And in the midst of all this chaos of the ship falling out of the sky and pieces falling off, I just love that there's this extended sequence of Captain Reynolds walking through Serenity. He's walking through the ship in a way that we never, like, Han Solo walked around the ship and we got a general idea of the layout of the Falcon. But if you're watching carefully in what is an uncut shot at the beginning of Firefly, Serenity, you could actually get your bearings on where things are in the ship. And I know that they built the ship in like two pretty big parts to keep that continuity. And it does play in the movie, because instead of disconnected sets being put together through careful editing, the camera is just following the captain through the ship all the way to his don't they go all the way to his cabin, right, which is hidden under the stairs there. But it's a really tour de force shot, and it makes me wish I could have snuck onto that set, because, I mean, who wouldn't want to lounge in the Firefly dining area? It looks so inviting with those little cubby holes and places to sit and eat, and such a great sequence. It really is one of the best sci-fi sequences in a movie, because of that spatial recognition that we get of, we are walking through the ship, a ship that we know doesn't exist. They never even built a model of Serenity. The Serenity ship was always CGI, so there isn't even something you can hold other than fan-made or aftermarket products. There's no prop of the Firefly, but they built this amazing all-enveloping set. And oh man, they should have saved that. They should have saved it. They should have put it on a backlot somewhere and charged 2 bits a gander, because there'd still be a line just to hang out in it. Imagine if you could rent that out for parties. Man, that would be so cool. You know, Wash's dinosaurs are on the console, down the steps, into the galley, down into the cargo hold, the engine room. I mean, it's all very well done. And also, what it not only sets up the character of Serenity, because that boat is their home and it is a character, but it also, you meet all the characters along the way, and they're giving you information that even if you never watched the TV show, you know exactly what each character does in relation to the crew and what they're up against. You know what I mean? The doctor, Simon doesn't want River to go down on the bank heist. Zoe's getting everything ready. Kaylee's working on the engine. Jane wants to bring grenades. Everybody's doing their part. It's fantastic. And when they do go out into the, I think they call it the Cal, right? And they're zooming to the city for that bank job. Like, it's all tour de force, good sci-fi, rooted in reality, so we get it. The aesthetic of Serenity and of Firefly, the series, of this Old West space stuff, fantastic. I mean, it really does tell you that Marshall Bravestar was way ahead of his time. If anybody remembers that really expensive toy line from the 80s. Marshall Bravestar was cowboys in outer space, and they all were made oversized with lasers that actually fired at each other and knocked stuff off. Very expensive toys. Didn't do well simply because of the price point. You know, it just was out of reach of most people. I actually knew this guy Mel, who worked at Knott's. He was a toy sculptor. He actually sculpted a lot of the Marshall Bravestar toys, and I was always like, it is cool knowing a guy who made a series of toys. That's neat. You know, he did the sign that's still on my door today. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago. He got very ill. He was a really good guy. And the sign on my door, he made Snoopy into Yoda. It says my name, and he made that. So I will treasure that forever. But that outer space cowboy thing really does work for Firefly. It keeps costs down, and it roots it in a reality that we all understand, with touches that make it futuristic. And one of the most amusing touches and the hallmark of Serenity, Firefly, is the way they speak. tussle, verse, shiny. It's a whole vernacular. I don't know if Whedon came up with that himself or if he sat down with a team full of people and said, we've got to come up with enough slang so that it feels, what's the word I'm looking for? Grounded. Like, this is reality for these people, you know? And I know that they use a lot of the Asian influences and they curse in Mandarin and Chinese. And they got away with a lot of bad language on the TV show, disguising it in another language, which is totally brilliant, and plays well because it's a natural extension of the aesthetic we saw in Blade Runner, which permeates nearly every piece of sci-fi afterwards. But no, the bank job is great. And it ends with the Reavers attacking. It's a good reintroduction to the Reavers because the team on the Firefly is so confident that when the Reavers show up and you see how shaken they are, you know that the Reavers must be somebody pretty bad. If these guys are bugging out, not only are they bugging out as fast as possible, but Mal has a moment where he pushes a guy off of the ship. We don't have room for you. If we bring you along, it will slow us down. We cannot keep you. And then he shoots him. He sees the Reavers grab him and he shoots him. And that's a real anti-hero moment. You know? I don't think we'd ever see Han Solo do that. We'll see Han Solo shoot Greedo. But I don't think we'd see Han Solo shoot a member of the Alliance being attacked by something. Like if a Hoth soldier was shown being attacked by a Wampa, Han would shoot the Wampa. Even if he wasn't going to save the guy, he would shoot the Wampa. Malcolm shoots the guy, puts him out of his misery. There's a fun dialogue sequence later that wraps that up. But I love the cow slamming into the ship taking off, and it brings the Reavers back into the story because that's going to be our central focus. Because we're going to find out that that River is the result of a scientific experiment to remove anger, hostility, and violence from a person's psyche. And the people that did it on the planet Miranda did it to such an extreme that the people that they subjected these bizarre experiments to simply gave up on life. They stopped eating, they stopped drinking, they stopped going to work, and they died. But the people who had an adverse reaction to the experiment went the other route, and they lost all their humanity. And we're going to find that the same experiment that created River is the same experiment that created the Reavers. And it ties it all together. And Serenity is a very intricately crafted, well-done sci-fi movie. It's better than the prequels. You know, it's not a grand save the galaxy. It is Malcolm trying to come up with a solution to save the people that he trusts and loves and get the Alliance off his back so he can just go about his business. And he sees in that he's going to have to save River. He's going to have to save River from the tracker. So we have a really good sequence where Mal goes to basically the cantina run by two twins, and in trying to turn in his money for his cut, River shows up and goes berserk. She unlocks her brain, becomes a badass, and basically mangles or kills enough people that it looks like the Kill Bill sequence, House of Fallen Leaves, right? And she's only stopped when Simon has a code word that puts her to sleep. But what we find out is through a character named Mr. Universe, great character. He lives on a remote planet. He's basically the universe's greatest hacker. You know, he bootlegs movies and shows, and he can hack into any signal. And we find out that a commercial that played, the Fruity Oat Bar commercial that played, had a hidden trigger for River. And Mr. Universe says that trigger has been playing across the galaxy on every commercial. Basically, it was the tracker's way of flushing River out. Absolutely brilliant. Boba Fett may have just followed the Falcon to Bespin. But the tracker's idea of the coded subliminal is totally brilliant to flush River out, because then she's recorded and being broadcast across the galaxy, and there's no question what quadrant she's in, who she's traveling with, and that's where Malcolm realizes that the time has come. The time has come to stop running and to face whatever River's up against and solve it so that he can get on with his life. So they end up journeying to a planet that's dead, where they discover all of what I said before. There's a brief stopover to pick up Inara. She's at a companion house where they teach women how to be really good at sex. It's interesting that in the Firefly universe, the prostitutes are the highest level of society. The companions, they're called. It's a really fun turn, making Inara a prostitute who's revered by society, making Malcolm in love with her. She's in love with Malcolm. They can't act on it because he's jealous of all the men that she's with. He doesn't want to pay for her. And their banter at the companion house is so good. Oh, it's so good where he goes, my dear Captain, you could not make me angry. That's what the tracker says. And she goes, oh yeah, spend an hour with him. And great sequence. They have a fight. He fights dirty. It's very clever. The tracking of Firefly is fantastic. And he's got the tracker with him. It's all very well done. And it does great because it pulls Inara into the journey so that she can go on the journey. And the crew discovers that they've got the goods on what the Alliance did to those people on Miranda. And if they can get it to Mr. Universe, they can broadcast it across the galaxy, and the truth will be out, and nobody will have these secrets, and they won't need to track and hunt down River because her knowledge of what they did will not be special anymore. So, in a very, touching series of events, the crew of the Serenity realizes they're going on a suicide mission together because one of their crew members is in trouble. Along the way, they stop off with Shepard Book. It's nice to see him back in the movie. It's pretty short-lived because the tracker starts killing everybody that's ever been in contact with Malcolm Reynolds, leaving them no place to go but, to point zero to get the information and bring it back. I love that whole series of events where the tracker ends up, killing Mr. Universe. It's very sad because we actually really liked him. And it's weird in that, remember, this movie's made in 2005, and this is the same year, I think, as what Minority Report and all of the big sci-fi movies of the day all had the same problem. They were unwilling to use wireless communication because wireless communication is not sexy. It's not MacGuffin-esque in movies. You show me the microfilm and that every spy in the world is trying to get it, I know what you mean. But if that microfilm is wireless, it's just data, it doesn't have the same tactile urgency, right? So the same way that Tom Cruise is moving information from one side of the computer to the other physically, the crew of the Serenity has to get this plastic chip to Mr. Universe. No, they don't go like, look, let me send it to you right now. Let me put it in an email. They don't do that, And that's the problem moving forward, is that if you're going to write movies like this, you got to take that into account. How many movies of the 80s would be completely undone with the advent of cell phones? Almost all of them could be fixed if the main guy had a cell phone, right? So it's interesting that Serenity has that same issue. They got to get the plastic chip from here to here and get it into the player. But that gives the audience an idea of what the goal is. So I don't begrudge that at all. You have to do that. You have to say, hey, the wireless network has been shut down. It has to be done physically. Got it. Let's get the computer discs. You know, third CD, everyone. My good friend Art Mooney. Right? So we get the standoff finally. And the standoff's great because the tracker is at Mr. Universe's planet with an armada of Alliance ships. Now, the Serenity, to get to Miranda Planet, had to disguise itself as a Reaver vehicle. They put crap on it. They put red paint. They put a cannon on it. They made it ugly, and they slipped through. And instead of just pulling the same ruse to get out, they do something different. And this is where Whedon's strength as a writer, other than, you know, stellar characterization, this is where clever turns happen. And what, you know, this is, it was a lot like Galaxy Quest. I love Galaxy Quest, where the NSA Protector goes through that floating minefield, right? It's the same sequence in Serenity, but instead, the NSA Protector goes out, heightens its deflector array, and pulls the mines through, right? The Serenity fires on the Reaver vehicle to get them to chase him. So when they emerge from the clouds and this tracker's like, well, there they are, just blast them out of the sky, and then the full Reaver armada comes through. That is good storytelling. It's well shot. It's the right amount of tension. And when you see the Reavers come through the haze, you, the audience member, know exactly what has happened. That's when film is cracking. It's when it's firing on all cylinders. And you and the audience are like, oh, yeah. It's when you put your fist up. You know, Brad Bird hates when characters go, yes. But we, the audience members, when we see the ships come through the haze, we go, yes. Now we got to fight. And the Alliance takes on the Reavers, the very army that they created. They're battling themselves, the worst parts of themselves. So then we get the dual objectives down below. You know, Malcolm finds out via Mr. Universe's sex robot that there's a second player underneath that they probably didn't get to, but the tracker hears it too. So while all of the crew, save Mal, are holed up to hold off the Reavers, they're on a suicide mission to hold them off so that Mal can get to the signal. And we get such great dialogue of Jane going, I could survive. I mean, maybe not you, but me. And Kaylee and Simon professing their lust for each other. And she goes, you mean sex? And he goes, yeah. She goes, well, I want to live. It's all really well done for characters that we assume are going out. Because if you know Joss Whedon, somebody's going to die. Now, Shepard Book has already died. So that is a red herring death to keep us off the scent that somebody or everybody is going to die at this point. And we know that Firefly ain't coming back. So this is it. This is the final standoff of the crew of the Firefly, of Serenity. And it's all, again, it's well done. And it doesn't have to be George Lucas type pyrotechnics. The goal is more important than the flash. Ooh, look at all this. We've just had a big space battle. So the firefight in the hallway, because the odds are so great, because the stakes are so high, that's what makes it good. Not because there's 10,000 Reavers, you know. It's because we want everybody to live, and if even one person dies, we're going to be upset. Now, I should preface that by saying this whole sequence takes place after the Firefly crash lands on the planet. I'm a leaf on the wind. What does that mean?
I'm a leaf on the wind. Watch how I soar.
And what happens in that sequence? The unthinkable. We lose Wash. We lose one of the first guys we ever saw on the show, playing with his dinosaurs. Zoe's husband. And it's such a shock I mean, you just don't think one of the main guys is going to go out like that, because he's okay when they land, and then a big thing crashes through and gets him. You know, they're still under attack. And it's very tragic. And a few minutes later, when Mal says to Zoe, "You're with me, right? You're here." Like, we know what's going. We know exactly what he means, because we, the audience, are still in shock that Wash is gone. But there isn't time to mourn. It's time to make sure that we get the rest of these people out of here. So that firefight commences at the same time that Mal is trying to get the chip into the player. And both battles are very good. The battle between the Tracker and Mal is fantastic, because the Tracker is a better fighter. Mal is outmatched. And we've seen what the Tracker can do to guys. So when they have the big fight, at the very last moment, it looks like it could go either way. The Tracker does the Tracker nerve pinch, the version of the Vulcan nerve pinch. We saw Michael Hitchcock get it and fall on a sword, paralyzed him. And Mal just stands there for a moment, and then he shoots him, and he goes, "I had those nerves moved." We're like, "Ew, that's such good writing. That's such a good way to get out of that," because we get a moment of Whedon's gonna kill Malcolm Reynolds. Oh my God. And then, of course he's not gonna kill Malcolm. It's Malcolm Reynolds. It's Nathan Fillion. You can't kill him. What you do is what we do. What he does in the film. Beats a living tar out of him. Makes him go through the fires of hell to get that thing broadcast. And even when he gets a chance to kill the Tracker, he doesn't do it. Instead, he paralyzes him and makes him watch that the signal's going out. Look at me. Look at that. It is done. You cannot stop it. The good guys for once have won in the world of Firefly. And then Mal just leaves him. Doesn't kill him. Leaves him to his own. You witness a planet without aggression, without war. This is what you wanted, and look how it turned out. And at that point, did the Tracker even know the consequences of the project on Miranda? Did he know the Reavers were the result of that? The scourge of the galaxy who rape and murder and cannibalize? Is that why he has a change of heart? Does he see reason? He does. I don't think he knew it up until that point, what the actual outcome of the Miranda project was. And then back at the firefight, one by one, everybody is shot. They're shot with darts, they're shot with laser bolts, and everybody's dying. And River says, "It's my turn." And she enters the realm of the Reaver, shuts the blast door, and it looks like, in typical Whedon fashion, she is sacrificing herself for the greater good. Each one of these crew members has shown their mettle, has shown that they're willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for their friends. And when the door opens and River is standing among the dead Reaver, and Malcolm has said, "I have sent the signal out," it's like a real moment of everybody has accomplished something. Nobody chinced out. Everybody gave all. Everybody fought until they literally could not fight anymore. It's fantastic. We get to see a funeral for Mr. Universe, for Book, for Wash. I'll admit, I was very choked up because it's very well done. We get to see the Serenity restored, all the Reaver stuff taken off, the cannon removed because that's not what the ship is about, all the blood taken off. And there's a great moment between the Tracker and Mal where the Tracker says, "I'm done." Doesn't mean you're free to go. Someone's going to search for you, but it won't be me. And you can tell, like, these two warriors have a respect for each other. A real respect for each other. And, you know, we're going to get the Serenity ship flying off into the heavens for the next adventure, with Malcolm at the wheel, River co-piloting, and everybody having their storylines wrapped up. It even ends with Kaylee and Simon having sex. What she's wanted since day one. What he didn't know he wanted till he couldn't have it. Faced with her death, his death. You know? Zoe and Jane are back on the ship. You know, they're moving on to the next thing. Zoe is morning wash. And then my favorite sequence, the character sequence between Mal and Inara, where he offers to take her back to the companion house, and she says she doesn't want to go. And in that moment, it looks like if there was going to be another adventure, another episode, these two are going to get together finally. I mean, they don't in the movie. They don't. But it's okay because the hint of it is there. The hint that these two are finally going to discover one another. You know, that really poignant scene of Mal watching the video of her leaving the ship. Here's a guy who loves her, and she loves him. I mean, he's gone to the end of the universe to save her. Even when she warns him off, he shows up anyways. You know, what's not to love? I mean, Marina Baccarin's one of the most beautiful women on the planet. She was in V. You know, we're circling back to the beginning. And Serenity just sort of glides off into the stratosphere. And it didn't do well at the box office. On a budget of 38, it made $39 million. It did very well on home video, of course, and TV and all that. But it didn't exactly burn up the box office. You know, in a perfect world, that movie would have made $180 million, and we'd be on our third Serenity adventure already. Didn't happen, you know. I always say you can't go home again, but sometimes you can make a quick visit, and Serenity is a quick visit. It wasn't a return fully to the universe with sequels and blah, 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 but it was more than we got on a lot of shows. And that does say a lot about Whedon's passion for these characters, his love for the fans, his need to tell great stories. You know, he would move on from this to Dollhouse and Dr. Horrible and the Avengers. But this will probably go down as one of his most personal, great projects. I mean, he shepherded that show through its run, watched Fox destroyed in placement and treatment, and then said, I am not done. I am going to make a movie. They all probably laughed. Why would you do that? Who wants to see a movie of a show nobody watched? Well, apparently a lot of us. Because you go to Comic-Con and there are still Firefly cosplayers, Brown Coat Society, documentaries, toys, costumes, you name it. The hat that Jane wears, if I counted them at Comic-Con, I would get to 100 and then lose count. Reaction opened its line with the Firefly figures. So it's a property that has longevity and people have a real passion for. And why wouldn't they? Nathan Fillion is charming. He is, I mean, this is, okay, it's going to sound terrible. He is Harrison Ford if Harrison Ford didn't become an a-hole. And that's the truth. You know, I love the sequence on Castle where he dressed up. I'm a space cowboy. Fantastic. The only thing you can say bad is I wish there were more of them. I wish there were more of these movies. But maybe they got it right the first time and there was no need to do it again. Serenity is, and I use this word for stuff that's great, it's a masterpiece. It's a self-contained story that has broad tentacles and tendrils into its source material. It wraps up everything we wanted to know about the TV show. It closes off all the stories, opens new ones, and ends hopeful. New adventures, new romance. Great, great movie. Fantastic. I wish it had come out in a time where they would have made a Serenity playset. I would love a oversized plastic Firefly to put all my figures in. I mean, that would be cool, to have that on my. I mean, I'm envisioning it right here on my desk, taking up most of it. Bigger than a sandcrawler from Kenner. But that's me. I love collecting the toys of the movies that I like. I like to hold them and remember how great it was. I just bought a Jurassic World, Jurassic Park Jeep at Target, $5.99 diecast, fantastic. It says Jurassic Park right on it. I'm hoping that movie this weekend is good. Again, when the lights go out, I want to fall in love. With Serenity, I did. It's a fantastic movie. If you've not seen any of Firefly or Serenity, are you in? You are ready, man. Get Netflix, fire it up, and call in sick. Watch all the episodes in order, and then watch the movie. And then buy all the reaction figures and relive the moments again and again and again. And even if I've spoiled it for you, it doesn't matter. You will still get so much enjoyment out of it. So, thank you to Joss Whedon for taking one last journey through that universe. Thanks to Hendel for recommending this movie to review. I had a great time watching it. It's funny, during Tomorrowland, I must have yawned 30 times. During Serenity, I was riveted. I couldn't look away. That's what happens with good writing. That's what happens is your mind is engaged. You are eagerly I can't wait to see what happens next. And even a movie like Serenity that I already knew what happens next, it doesn't matter. Because it's familiar and fun to watch it unfold again. Movies, like I've always said, are like old friends. They're there for you. So, check them out, why don't you? You will have a good time. You really will. I am Jeff Tucker. I am the voice of 91 Reasons. Again, thank you to Patreon pledger Hendel. Sorry it took so long to get this episode out. Opening of Iron Reef sort of engulfed 2 or 3 weeks of my life, and when you're doing 2 or 3 shows like this a week, stuff like that can really derail you. So I apologize, but nice to get it out. June 2nd, not too bad. I mean, a month late, but what are you going to do, right? If you'd like to have a movie that you love reviewed on 91 Reasons, go to our Patreon page for $35. You can pick out a movie and I'll review it. And my son always tells me that as far as Patreon campaigns go, that might be one of the cheapest ever. Because most of the stuff where you can involve yourself in what the content of the show is, it's like hundreds of dollars. But I can't imagine charging people that. This is too much fun. But again, thanks for supporting the show. Huge, massive thanks to everybody who helped on our GoFundMe campaign this last week. We're trying to move out of Riverside, get back to Orange County, and you can imagine that it's quite expensive, and we haven't sold our house yet. When we sell our house, everything will be fine, but the last mile is the hardest mile. Thank you, Morrissey. That's the way it goes. But eventually, I will open the show and tell you we've moved, and you won't even know it because it'll still be the same show. But thanks for listening. Check us out on Patreon. Check us out on iTunes. Give us a 5-star review. If you want to read my books and see if I really am telling the truth, you can get them on Amazon. They are The Sixth Key, The Lost Station, and The Infinite Backward. You can get them as paperbacks, or you can get them as a Kindle download. I have a few copies still in my possession left over, so if you want a signed copy direct from me, contact me on Facebook, and I can get that out to you. It's not that expensive, and you get it signed however you want. But I don't have a lot of those, so don't delay if you want it. But again, thanks to everybody for listening. More episodes coming up. We'll wrap up our films of 1988. And I'm still working on that big Father's Day episode. I can't wait to put that together. So thanks for listening. Oh man, I just flashed back to wanting to walk on the Serenity. I would have given anything. I know that they filmed that right there at Universal Studios Hollywood. I know they did. And I could have been on the Serenity if I snuck in. Oh well, what are you going to do? Everybody has regrets, right? Oh well. Thanks for listening again. My name is Jeff Tucker, and this show is 91 Reasons.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?
Real quick, before we take off here, I have a question. I don't know the answer to it. Why wasn't the theme song in the movie? It doesn't start with the theme song, and I thought for sure we'd get it when the credits rolled, or like a montage at the end before the credits. I don't know, but the song never plays in the movie, and I'm wondering, like, was there a rights issue? Was it an aesthetic thing? We don't want to put the theme song in the movie? I don't know, because the theme song is such an integral part of the Firefly experience. It's one of the few theme songs for a TV show that if you really like the show, you don't fast forward through. You want to hear it. So I'm curious why it was not in the movie. It's so weird for something so identifiable to not make the cut. Seems just, I don't know, it seems bizarre. But I don't know the answer to it. I'll do some research, but I've never come across the answer to why that great song is not in the movie. So, anywho, see you later.
The man they call James. He robbed from the rich and he gave to the poor. Stood up to the man and he gave him what for. Our love for him now ain't hard to explain. The hero of Canton, the man they call James. Now James saw the mutters' backs breaking. He saw the mutters lament, and he saw that magistrate taking every dollar and leaving 5 cents. He said, "You can't do that to my people. You can't crush them under your heels." So Jane strapped on his hat, and in 5 seconds flat, stole everything Boss Higgins had to steal. He robbed from the rich and he gave to the poor. Stood up to the man and he gave him what for. Our love for him now ain't hard to explain. The hero of Canton, the man they call.
Ain't all buds and charts, little albatross. You know what the first rule of flying is? Well, I suppose you do, since you already know what I'm about to say.
I do. But I like to hear you say it.
Love. You can learn all the math in the verse. If you take a boat in the air that you don't love, she'll shake you off just as sure as a turn in the world. Love keeps her in the air when she ought to fall down. Tells you she's hurting before she keens. Makes her home.